All right, I'm going to do a quick, welcome back to Exercise Science Lab. We're going to talk a little bit about the ISS, the Intrinsic Stabilizing Subsystem. Brent Brookbrush and the Brookbrush Institute is a physical therapist. I don't know if he coined that phrase, he uses that idea a lot. You'll see this in various textbooks. So whether you're in DPT school, whether you're studying fitness, it doesn't matter. It's just understanding. It's just a word that we use to understand the core muscles, right? We talk all about the core, we do planks and we do push-ups and crunches and that, but what are we actually working? So we talked about the ISS, the intrinsic stabilizing subsystem, being the transverse abs, that's that corset that wraps around your waist, all right? And then you have the small multifidi muscles. Multifidus is singular. The multifidi muscles run up your vertebrae to stabilize the small little junctions of your vertebrae. And then you have your pelvic floor, all right, and your diaphragm, which is the ceiling. So we use the soda can as kind of an example of when that soda can is non-open and you shake it up, all right? That is you taking a breath in, creating intra-abdominal pressure, and creating a strong core with, again, your transverse abs, your diaphragm, your pelvic floor, and your multifidi muscles in back. All right, then that's your ISS, your intrinsic or your inner core. We get to the outer core. On top of that transverse abs is your external obliques in front, your internal obliques in back, your rectus abdominis, right? Your six-pack abs, and your erector spinae in back, all right? So that's the outer layer. And then the kind of the tweener that we talk about is your QL, your quadratus lumborum. That's the one we talked about being an extension of your iliacus, right? Your psoas muscles come up and your iliacus muscles, your hip flexors come up from your groin, your lesser trochanter of your femur comes up through your pelvis, connects to your pelvis and connects to your lumbar vertebrae. But the iliacus fans out over your ilium, but if that fascia tissue were to continue, it continues into your quadratus lumborum and up to your ribs and a couple vertebrae. So those are all the muscles of your core, all right, that we've discussed in class. All right, so what we talk about then is, I mentioned in other videos, your two-hand rule. If I were to mimic sort of the parallel horizontal level of my diaphragm, and then the horizontal level of my pelvic floor with kind of a neutral pelvis, I get two hands like this. The idea is that if I bow, if I bend over, if I'm doing anything athletic, I more or less maintain that. And if I lose this, meaning my diaphragm, my rib cage goes up, and I anterior tilt, right, to where my pelvic floor then tilts down, it opens up my hands like this, or like that, meaning scissors, right? We call that open scissors syndrome. And so when someone walks in and says they're having stomach problems, lower back problems, hip problems, neck problems, and you see them in this posture where they're kind of sticking their booty out a little bit. They have this anterior tilt. The rib cage is coming up. That's what we call open scissors syndrome, right? So what do we do about that? Well, it's just a matter of cueing them in these different positions. So it doesn't matter if I'm going to do a cable exercise here, and I'm going to pull, let's say a face pull, right? I'm going to be aware of the fact that they're not falling into that lordotic posture, that open scissors position. I'm going to tell them again, tuck your tail, all right? Breathe a couple times without expanding your rib cage. See if you can tuck your abs in a little bit, all right? Stay tall and then pull there. So tucking your tail, I seem to overuse it, but it's just one of the best cues for finding some of that neutral pelvis. I might have them sit, so this is a wooden box. Think about your bowl of water. So I can find my sit bones, and if I roll back on my sit bones, right, I'm kind of closing up the scissors, which are other problems, or if I roll forward on my sit bones and anterior tilt, I could fall into that open scissors syndrome, or the open scissors position as well. So what I want to do is roll back, roll forward, and find that middle ground. Find that neutral pelvis where you're sitting as tall as you can. You get as tall as you can from your sit bones to the top of your head. And if you're doing that, you're in a pretty good position. Then for your rib cage, it's just breathing work. We breathe too much of an accessory breath into our chest. It's not a bad breath. We need to do it. But we got to breathe with our diaphragm. We got to be able to take a deep breath into my stomach and out. See, my rib cage didn't come up at all. I could also take this breath right? But if I breathe in too much like that from the get-go, my rib cage pops up and I might fall into that same kind of open scissors, at least on the top position, which means I may lose some intra-abdominal pressure and some core stability, right? So the two things we're looking for is be aware of your pelvis. Is your pelvis in a reasonably neutral position, depending on what you're doing, whether you're doing a plank, push-up, or deadlift, and are you breathing correctly to where your rib cage is not excessively going up? Now, if I don't have good thoracic spine extension mobility, if I reach overhead, I may have to extend my ribs and my spine, and I lose that because of that, right? So I might just be jumping up and grabbing a rebound, but now my rib cage has popped up. I'm in that same open scissors position, all right? So it may be a matter of working on thoracic spine mobility, shoulder joint mobility, scapular humeral rhythm, all these different things. But the two things we're looking for is breathe correctly, use your diaphragm, maintain that postural integrity here, that two-hand rule, and then be aware of your neutral pelvis, all right? So a little extra there, but that's your inner core and your outer core, along with how to maintain that strong, I hate to use the word neutral too much, but I use all, but that's the other idea there, right? The two-hand rule here, that we maintain this integrity, all right? So whether you're doing planks, maintain that, think about that, or some exercises, split stance, square stance, single leg stance. We could always kind of dump all these ways. We got to maintain that strong core position. All right, so hopefully that helps. And again, comment below, ask me any questions, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.